أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وأحلى بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your amal, accept your deeds, accept your fasting and your tawbah, inshallah, and elevate you to the level of the pious ones, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, and may you be chosen amongst those who are the God-conscious ones. Our discussion has been revolving around a foundational, fresh beginning of the deen, of Islam, of religion in general. And we have now reached class number 6. And just like that, now we are a week into the month of Ramadan. And the past 2 nights now, we've had some crucial discussions in laying down this foundation that we're going to build on. One point I want to make here, and then I'll get to the slides of today, and that is that, one point I want to make here very clear is that everybody has their own respective path and their own journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even on this path of religion, this is not a race. This is not a contest. This is not, some marathon. It is, it's a journey that is very, very respective to you and to you alone. And so long as you continue to kind of try and strive and struggle on this path, Allah will accept that. Even in these past 5-6 nights that I've been speaking to you, these are not easy concepts. They're not overnight concepts for me to kind of apply right away. Laying down a foundation for any sort of structure, building a journey, whatever the case may be, requires time and a lot of patience, right? For example, those of you who have bought homes where you are the first owner of that home, and now you're watching the house build from the ground up. They spend an extraordinary amount of time laying down the foundation first, digging the ground up, laying the concrete. After that, the floors and the stairs and the kitchen, all that comes easy. So embrace your specific path to God. You don't need to compare yourself, nor do you need to judge anybody else in this path. This is not an easy path. It's a path where we're dealing with living in this world to the utmost of our ability on a pious path, and then really paving the way for our next, world and the world beyond that. Okay, so if not everything makes sense or is accepted, or it takes some time, or you're confused, or it's heavy, it's okay. Take a deep breath, send a salawat, rely on God, ask Him in your prayer. Look, I don't want this to be hereditary or inherited. I want my belief in you to come from my heart, right? Not from the voice of my father or my mother or somebody else, right? And inshallah, Allah will open up the doors for you. Let's go ahead and begin. Today is, can I have the host please allow me to share my screen, if you don't mind? Today is a crucial point in our journey. We are halfway through the series. And as I promised you last night, after tonight, you will find out, which worldview of the two makes complete sense inside of our innate nature, inshallah. I hope. Again, can I have the host, please, if you don't mind? Whoever is hosting this right now, I need to be able to share my screen, please. Right now, it's been disabled. Please, I need to share my screen. No, we're not there yet. Okay. There you go. Thank you very much. Look at that. May Allah bless the behind the scenes AV guys who bring us this program without being being anonymous and being unknown. May Allah bless you for your efforts. Let's get to class number 6, inshallah, and we will go from there. Hopefully you guys have your notebooks out, hopefully sitting as a family, and hopefully this is instigating some sort of questions here and there. I really hope that that's happening, inshallah. So as a recap from last night, okay, and I need to do this quickly just so we're able to kind of segue into tonight's somewhat seamlessly. We talked about the fact that we are individuals who innately seek perfection, okay? I gave examples of mundane things like a scratch in a car, a hair in your food, I don't know, a thread on your pants. Those things are all things that we would reject, okay? On top of that, we not only seek perfection, we look to hide imperfections of our own and look to somehow now accept and be tolerant towards the imperfections of others, okay? Either we physically hide our imperfections, if it's a physical imperfection, or we look to hide our faults, hide our sins, etc., okay? And that brought us to the idea of the testament of limits, where I talked about the fact that our seeking of perfection, our need for perfection must be paired with the need for the unlimited. The need for the unlimited comes from a detesting of limits, okay? We don't like limits as human beings. Now, don't tell me, like I said last night, Asad bhai, we need limits. Fine, I know we need limits. Doesn't mean that we like limits. That means that innately we seek out the unlimited, okay? And so because we seek out the unlimited, innately we are looking to fulfill that need. We have a need for two things. I'm going to repeat this several times tonight: perfection and the unlimited. Innately, logically. Not one verse of the Quran, not one hadith, nothing. Okay? So these two are very, very important, because now when we go into our today's discussion and review or revisit our talk on the worldview, remember, I talked about the fact that there are essentially two worldviews that are presented to us to follow. The materialistic view, one that the atheist follows, and the divine view, the one that, the ones that are God conscious and God fearing follow. There might be others, but these ultimately are the two major ones today. Let's examine them in light of what we've learned now the past 2 nights. Okay? So let's look at the 3 main elements behind the materialist worldview. They believe in matter, number 1. The belief in a materialist worldview is that everything is based on matter. Okay? This idea of metaphysical, supernatural, all that is rejected. They believe and they tread the path of the empirical theory of knowledge. And in our discussion in epistemology, we talked about why sensationalism at this stage in the game is not going to work. And finally, they believe in the idea that this world is the end all and be all. And because this world is a world of matter, it is a perishing world, it's a finite world, it's a limited world. Okay? And these are the 3 main ingredients of a materialist worldview. Okay? Let's come to divine. Divine also has 3 main concepts to them. Okay? If the materialist worldview is matter-based, the divine worldview is metaphysical-based. Okay? The idea that ultimately the origin of this universe, the origin of creation, the wisdom behind this creation, all stems from a metaphysical source. Okay? If the materialists believe in a worldview that is empirical, it's the divine worldview that believes in an intellectual theory of knowledge, initially. Like I said, those other theories of knowledge, tajrubi, naqli, shahudi, will all come into play once we establish which one of these 2 worldviews is accurate. And then finally, it believes not in a worldly worldview, but in a spiritual one, where yes, man is comprised of body and soul, man is comprised of body and spirit, but ultimately what leads the way, what governs it, is his spiritual dimension. Okay? And so, again, if I can just kind of do a quick recap here, The elements of the materialist worldview all exist in a limited realm. That should be obvious to all of you. Matter, empirical nature, empirical knowledge, and the worldly worldview are all limited. They have hudud, they have limits, they have a beginning and they have an end. Okay? At one moment they weren't, now they are. Even within their own existence, they are limited. Matter is limited. Okay? It cannot be in more than one place. It is confined by its dimensions, its weight, its height, its depth. Okay, the world right now, there's no expert or scientist that believe this world is a infinite world. The basis of this world is matter. We're looking at things, we're feeling things, we're smelling things, we're tasting things. Those are all things that are what? That are limited. They have hudud, they have had. I talked about the limited nature of our senses. The eyes can't hear, the ears can't see, right? The nose can't taste, our mouth can't smell. All those things are limited. So it's possible that in this limited realm, a lot that exists outside of matter is lost, unidentified, not known. All those things are very, very possible. Come to the elements of the divine worldview, and everything exists on an unlimited realm. Metaphysical doesn't have had. In fact, by its very nature, it is a worldview, a movement that exists outside of matter. Number two, intellectual. The aql, the intellect, is not bound by any sciences. Yes, it's bound within its capacity, but it is able now to comprehend unlimited things, or possibly things that exist outside the senses. And finally, the spirit, right? And one day, someday, I'll have a discussion on the immaterial nature of one spirit, of our ruh, of our soul, of our spirit. Okay. One thing that I want to mention here very quickly is that we talk about the unlimited nature of the spirit of man, or spirit of creation. Very quickly, as a proof to that, and I'll get to my next slide, is that if you look at our own creation, okay, very quickly, please follow me. This is an essential class. From here now, we take we actually detour off our path and go down towards another path. We're going down the highway and our exit is here. Now we're exiting off this highway and getting onto another one. Okay, right now we're on the ramp towards the other highway. This has to make sense to you. If we don't merge properly, we're going to be lost. Okay, if you look at our creation, for example, my creation of 40 plus years, it's been a physical change for me. Okay, I've gone from a newborn baby I've gone from a very, very cute newborn baby to an adorable toddler to even more of a cute young man and we'll move on. And the idea is that every stage of my physical creation, when I was 2 to when I was 10 to when I was 15 to when I was 21 to when I was all of them went through sometimes a very drastic physical change. Right? If I was to show you my newborn baby picture, after gushing over it, you would sit there and say, wow, is that you, Asad Bhai? Yeah, that's me. You can't recognize me. Okay. If you ask your grandfather for a picture of when they were, I don't know, when they were 7 or 8 years old, you would think, wow, I can't believe that's you, Dado or Nano or Grandpa. I can't believe that's you. Meaning that the human being goes through a creation, such a drastic physical creation, sometimes to the point where it's unrecognizable. Okay, we become unrecognizable in our physical realm. But yet, if I was to show you a picture of when I was 6 months old to 3 years old to 10 years old to 15 years old to 25 years old, I would show you at least 8 or 9 different pictures of my physical progression in life to the point where I get to you now, the way I look now. You would think, wow, these are 8 to 10 different pictures physically. In one picture, my nose is a certain size. In one picture, I have more hair. In one picture, I have a black beard, ya Allah. And all these things are there. But the one common consensus throughout is that these are all pictures of me, Asad Jafri. Nobody can say that's Asad 2.0, this is Asad 3.0, Asad 5.0. No, there is a unifying element between every stage of my physical creation, a unifying element that does not allow me to lose my identity. Okay, a 2-year-old you, a 5-year-old you, a 25-year-old you, a 58-year-old you is still you. That you, or I-ness, as it's referred to in today's philosophy or psychology, is the spirit of the human being, that unifying factor. Okay, that identifies who you are, that is the I-ness inside of you. You can physically change all you can sit there and have a face job and completely change your face, no problem, have the whole facelift, but that's still you. At the core, it's still you. And that you that we talk about, that unifying you that's been with you since you were born until today, is the spirit of you. That, that's there. So that, of course, exists in an unlimited realm. It doesn't have had and hudud and dimensions like we do. Our physical dimension has dimensions to it, right? It has limits to it. I can only be at one moment. I have a certain height, a certain weight, a certain look to it, to myself, as do all of you, okay? So that was important for me to do. Now, hopefully that all makes sense. This is all based on discussions we've had in the past few days. Okay? Now, let's come to a few concluding statements. Number one, the right worldview must fulfill all innate needs of man. Remember in my worldview discussion, okay? The worldview now controls everything from our reason to our intellect, our thought to our knowledge, our comprehension to our actions. And then it's an ongoing cycle, okay? If any of these are not affected by the worldview, then we're lost, right? Something has gone wrong, okay? Again, I go back to the example I gave yesterday. You compare two people, one who lives an atheist life, one who lives, let's say, a Christian life, an Orthodox Christian life, and compare their life in one world, in one society, sometimes in one family, two separate lives, dictated by their worldview. So it must now, a proper worldview, a correct worldview. Remember my very first slide now, which seems like a lifetime ago. I talked about religion and irreligion. One is based on reality, one is based on fantasy or fiction. Okay, that religion that's based on reality has to now, infiltrate everything from our actions to our belief. It can't be. You would stop and you think about it for a moment. You have a person who claims to be a religious, spiritual person, but his life is one that does not resemble his spirit, right? And you would think, well, that's hypocrisy. You have to live what you believe and believe what you live. And if there is a discrepancy, there's something wrong in the foundational setting of your belief. So it must fulfill all innate needs. Number two, any innate need left unfulfilled will result in an incomplete and hence imperfect worldview. Any innate need left unfulfilled. And we have many innate needs, everything from hunger to thirst. So a true religion should tell us how to eat, what to eat, how much to eat, what to drink, when to drink, how much to drink. We have an innate need for companionship, an innate need for justice, an innate need for worship. All of these should be answered by a correct worldview. Okay? If not, it's incomplete. It's a worldview, but it's not a complete worldview. And because the worldview affects so much inside of my life, it has to be a complete and perfect worldview. Statement number three, man's innate desire for perfection leads him to seek the unlimited, as limitedness is seen as imperfection. Okay? To be limited is a deficiency. You exist within limits, within a box. Okay? And so you're not able to truly grasp those things that are outside your limits. And thus, the idea of limitedness is seen as imperfection. Okay, which cancels anything that's limited and imperfect does not meet our innate desire and our innate needs. That we established yesterday and the first 5 minutes of today. Hopefully that's nice and concrete and solid inside of you. Statement number four now. This stuff now should begin to now, you should start to see the picture now focusing very, very well. Start to see, where you're going to be getting off the highway right now. Statement number four, a worldview that is based on limited components will leave the innate need for the unlimited inside man unfulfilled, resulting in him abandoning that particular worldview. Why do people change from this worldview to that worldview? Reverts, for example, right? People, for example, sometimes, they denounce their own worldview halfway through their life. Yes, there's veils there, veils of anger, veils of tragedy, veils of ignorance, veils of sin, right? Veils of this false fallacy of freedom. All those are there. But part of it is because they've discovered that there is a dimension inside of me that needs to be fulfilled, and this worldview does not fulfill it. Does not fulfill it. Let me read that statement number 4 again for you slowly. A worldview that's based on limited components. Matter is limited. Empirical knowledge is limited. This world is limited. That's not me defining it. I would challenge anybody to equate the world of materialism to the unlimited. Equate the idea of this world, this finite world. It's called a finite world by science. By its very definition, it is limited. Limited by, like I said, its own dimensions, its weight, its height, its length, its depth. A worldview that's based on those limited components does not fulfill the need we have for the unlimited. Remember, our search for the unlimited actually is a worldview search for the unlimited. Okay? Yeah, we might be able to live a life in this world of unlimited money and unlimited mileage and unlimited data, but those are all superficial, surface level concepts. Deep down inside the innate need of the human being is a need for the unlimited. And a limited worldview does not fulfill that need we have inside of you. Eventually now, if you are true to your worldview, you'll see holes in it, you'll see limitations in it, you'll see deficiency in it, and you'll begin now to look elsewhere. Okay? Look elsewhere. Now, which brings me to my bold statement number 5 and the conclusion of the first half of our discussion, where now I'm going to answer the question of which worldview is it. And statement number 5 now, based on logic, based on rational thought, based on intellectual discussion, man's innate need for perfection and the unlimited. 2 things you have to now accept and understand. And take a moment. If you need a couple of days now, digest. Go ahead. But we have an innate need for perfection and the unlimited. Leads him to the divine world view. As all elements within the material world view are limited and thus rejected. Okay? Man's innate need for perfection and the unlimited leads him, calls for him, it gravitates him towards the divine worldview, as all elements within the material worldview are limited and thus rejected. Okay? So of the 2 worldviews, which one is innate inside, which one fulfills our innate needs? It is the divine worldview. Okay? That's all based on our past. It took us 7 days, 6 different classes to get to this point. Okay? Now, I'm going to end a little bit early today, around 6:40 Eastern, in about 5 minutes, because I'm assuming there'll be a lot of questions. Momentum of questions is building, and I need to be done by 7 o'clock today, Eastern. So, once again, let's go from the beginning quickly, a quick recap for 4 minutes, and come with me as I took you to this so far. You have been incredible in this journey with me. The questions, the feedback, the DMs I'm getting are absolutely inspiring. They make me emotional. They make me feel like, you know what, this was a good idea to do this. I'm getting messages from Sydney, Australia, from all up and down North America, from people all the way in India, Pakistan, and it's just, it's incredible. And it just goes to show you that, yes, it doesn't mean that we haven't been believing so far, but it's always good to go and revisit the base, right, guys? So we define the deen, the chain of thought. Remember the chain of thought from fikr to thought, right? Where that deen and religion comes in are the triggers of the thought. Perfect. That's where religion now is defined. Let's now go towards the importance of worldview / religion. These 2 terms are used interchangeably. We define a worldview to be a harmonious beliefs of man in this universe. How you view the world is how you live in this world, and we see that every day amongst ourselves, in our family, in our coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. Then we establish that, okay, fine, religion at least demands our attention. And again, I'll ask my young guys out there who roll their eyes to religion, who huff and puff towards religion, who don't understand religion, who see it as some cultural thing that our parents are holding on to for dear life, religion at least requires your undivided and fair attention. Be fair to the religion. And we talked about from the fitrat to the call and the invitation of the pious men throughout history. And of course, remember that the ihtimal and the mizan ihtimal, that chart I had for you, that led us to the idea of epistemology. We talked about what? Tajrubi, naqli, shahudi, and aqli. I talked about why the first three cannot be used now. And the final one that has to be used is we have to come to this conclusion based on our own reasoning, our own intellect, our own rationale. Yes, if you've been told from day number one, Allah ek, Allah ek, Allah ek, God is one, God is one, God is one, that's fine. That's simply our parents ensuring that there's no confusion. But eventually you have to embrace your own journey. You have to move away from the inherited Allah ek, God is one, to the idea that yes, in my heart now I believe that God is one. That has to happen. If not for anything else, for your purpose, for you to have that contentment. I never want anyone to believe in a religion that simply has been shoved down their throat, right? Because parts of this religion are not easy. Fasting right now is not easy. And God forbid you do all of this effort just to please mom and dad, and you don't reap the proper growth internally that you should be able to reap. Okay, from there, we talked about last night the idea that our intellect now, that we have taken from epistemology, tells us that we are humans that seek perfection and humans that subconsciously seek the unlimited. And an incorrect identification of the unlimited is the fall of man today. I gave examples 3 or 4 last night that led us to tonight's, where now we've come to the conclusion that based on all these things, the only worldview that meets all of my innate needs, from food and water to perfection and the unlimited, is a divine worldview. Now, from this point forward until the ending of my lecture series, we now begin to examine the divine worldview. And as you know, the base of the divine worldview is a belief in one God. Okay? So now we begin that discussion. So now we eliminate the fact. And now we understand that, okay, fine, I'm getting off this highway, right? Of which one, and I'm merging onto the God highway. And now I'm going to be on that God highway with Sayyid Asr for the next 6 or 7 discussions, with the exception, of course, of the Wafat Majlis on Friday, and then, of course, the Jashan the week after. So, this is a crucial step in our journey. Inshallah, now we'll open up the floor for any questions. Let me know what you guys think. Are we digesting it? Is it marinating? Are we able to kind of, these are not easy discussions. They're heavy, guys. Take a moment, right? It's also especially heavy when we are like an hour before we're about to break our fast, or 2 hours before we break our fast. Maybe our mind is fuzzy. Maybe our heart is, maybe we're tired. So, if you need to go ahead and revisit it, go ahead and revisit it, okay? So I'll stop the share right now, inshallah, and I'll go ahead and open the floor for any questions. Mutahar Bhai, I think, is here, hopefully.
Assalamu alaikum, Maulana.
He's on his phone, apparently, yes.
Yes, Maulana, sorry, my computer is acting up, so I had to join with the phone.
No problem.
And I have to read questions on my phone, so I will not be on the video.
Sure.
So the first question we have here is, how do we know we have been forgiven for our imperfections, mistakes, or misconceptions, so that we can move forward in our lives?
Great question. And it's a great question. So let me ask you, hypothetically, if somebody wrongs you, if you've done something wrong to somebody, if you handle the situation wrong and you've apologized to them, how you know you're forgiven is how they act with you. Okay? So if there is some sense of normalcy, if they are communicating with you, if they're replying to your messages, if they're including you in their celebrations or whatever the case may be, then okay, they're not harboring any resentment. When we turn to God and we say, look, God, up until now, let's say, for example, I've lived an up and down life. Okay. I've had moments where I don't get this religion. I've had moments where I'm really buried in it. And all of that can stem from simple presentation. I am a staunch believer of the fact that there is no real enmity towards religion or enmity towards God. There seems to be an incorrect presentation of the religion to a lot of our elders, especially, where now it's left a bad taste in their mouth, or possibly we've had an unrealistic expectation from the religion that was never fulfilled because it was unrealistic, and we blame the religion for that journey in life. And so, when we talk about forgiveness, yes, there are signs of the forgiveness of God. One of them is the fact that, there is a change in your behavior. Allah now inspires you to be better. Allah inspires you to not repeat that mistake over and over again. If there's a sin you used to do habitually, and we habitually sin sometimes, but now, alhamdulillah, that sin no longer exists in my life. No, that sin has been forgiven. On top of that, we don't need proof sometimes. Sometimes it's enough to know that God said it, khalas. God said, I will forgive all of your sons, all your sins, except for shirk. The problem is not so much about God, mutaharbai. The problem is that we don't forgive ourselves. We constantly harbor guilt. We constantly have this resentment with ourselves. We bang our head against the wall for something we did 15 years ago. God's begging you, move on. I've forgiven you. Look ahead. But no, we drive like this, looking in the rear view mirror, looking at all the mistakes that we made in the past. When God is saying, look, I've forgiven you, to the point where it doesn't exist anymore. You need to forgive yourself, right? So remember, there is no retirement age when it comes to theology and aqaid in God's world. If you're 65 listening to me, you're like, oh, the whole life I thought this, that. It's okay. The moment that we're ready to reset our button and press the reset button, God will be there when we start up all over again. Okay? There's never a point of no return with God. Okay? And there isn't a point for you as well, inshallah. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Maulana. Appreciate it. Okay, so next question we have, Maulana, here is why is it so difficult for most humans to follow their innate need for perfection and the unlimited? Why is it difficult for humans to follow that?
Because you have to fight your nafs for it, right? There is an entity inside of you that that screams instant gratification, that screams the idea that sacrifice and compromise to get to that perfection and that unlimited. It requires investment. It requires a lot of work, and sometimes people just don't want to put the work in. Right? The question is why. The question might be better worded. Why is it so hard for people to be truly spiritual and pious? Well, because it requires hard work. It requires a struggle. Right? Allah requires struggle on your path. Right? Man is nothing but what he strives for. Right? So when you strive for these things, you end up becoming like that. Right? So that's why it's difficult. Right? Because this world presents you this animalistic freedom idea, this instant gratifying concept, and that simply doesn't exist in religion. Religion is an investment. Religion is a process. It's a growth mindset, whatever the case may be, inshallah. So yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. I mean, you have to fight your nafs. You have to fight, your desire inside of you that wants things right now. And that's why it's called the major struggle, Jihad Akbar, for that reason.
Great. Thank you so much, Maulana. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here in the video.
No worries. That's fine.
So I'm going to stay on audio now. So next question I have is about today's lecture. If everyone has their own path and others should not be judging you, where does Amar bil Maruf and Nahi Anil Munkar fits in?
Great answer. Great question. So Islam makes it wajib on you to enjoin the good and forbid the evil. Absolutely. It's part of our furu'u din. But you should understand that those things that are wajib on you are not always absolute in nature, meaning it's not that they have to be done in all circumstances, okay? There's conditions involved. For example, Hajj. It could be that Hajj is wajib on all of us, but it could be that we never meet the conditions of going to Hajj. So it could be that we live our whole life. There are some people who have passed away. And it's not like they didn't perform Hajj because they could, but they were never made, it was never wajib on them. There are people right now in the month of Ramadan who are not fasting because either they're traveling or they're sick or they can't fast. So certain wajibat are conditional obligations. Amr bin Ma'ruf is conditional. And one of the main conditions is that a person should approach another person to do good only if they believe that their words will have an impact on them. Approaching a complete stranger and saying, look, do this, do this, do that, do that. They're like, who are you? Like, do I know you? You don't even know my first name. You're telling me that, right? So there's conditions involved. Now, even when the conditions are met, like let's say, for example, your spouse or your sibling or a friend of yours, that, if I told them that, look, you shouldn't do this, they'll be okay with it. Even then, the approach is not with judging eyes. The approach is with a loving and compassionate heart, right? So even within Amr bin Ma'ruf, there's no judging involved. Judging are for those people where you look down on them. You're trying to enjoin the good for somebody that you care about, that you're close with, right? So Amr bin Ma'ruf is there, absolutely, with conditions, of course. But again, I would say even that is not with the eyes of judgment. It's the eyes of caring. It's the eyes of you saving their path of salvation from going astray, inshallah.
That makes sense. Okay, let me see if we have any other questions, Maulana. I don't see one here.
Oh, that's. I thought for sure they'd say, "Wait a second." So that's good. No, it's good. Based on the fact that there has been a good amount of questions in the past, that means that today made complete sense for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's excellent. But anyways, I'll let you finish.
We just have one more question here.
Sure.
So if perfection requires going against your need sometimes, like you're inclined to do something, but perfection says don't do it, and it's very difficult to do. So how do we go about doing it? Because our inclination is towards, even though we want to be perfect, but we are inclined to do imperfect things.
So that's why it's a constant process, right? That's why it's never to a point where you can say, okay, I'm perfect now, let's move on. That will never happen. And that's why I have been saying for many, many years, if you frequent my lectures, you know that I've always said that religion is a process-oriented reality, not a result-driven process, meaning that God accepts the process, even if the results may not be there, because it is an ongoing reality. Yes, there are elements inside of us that are screaming for us to do, to drink, to eat, to love, to act upon. And yes, part of our perfection is to fight those satanic, destructive needs inside of us. Absolutely. Now, how do we go about doing that? Resolve, willpower, self-control, accountability, muhasabah, knowledge. All these things are tools that will help us. Like I said, everyone's version of perfection is relative to them. It's not an absolute definition of perfection. Your perfection is different. Mine is different. It all depends on my capacity, or my growth, my path, what surrounds me, everything, right? Sometimes we think in absolutes, and Islam is not about absolute. Islam is a case-by-case situation, right? So yes, part of the perfection process is for us to fight those innate satanic needs inside of us. And yes, and that stems from, like I said, practice, from worship, from forgiveness, from accountability, muhasabah, from willpower, resolve, from having the right spouse, from having the right circle of friends around you, from, I don't know, all those triggers of thought we talked about, right? Media and friends and family and influence and mental health, all that helps us in the development of our perfection, inshallah. I'm not sure if I lost Mutahir. Did I lose you, Mutahir?
I'm sorry, can you hear me, Maulana?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. So there was one question that came actually a few days ago, and you said we'll answer it later.
Yeah.
And so let's hope that we can answer that question.
Thank you.
So a question is this: if our innate nature is to want unlimited, then is it fair to say freedom is our purpose?
No. So now we've defined freedom not in the Western sense or in the global sense, but freedom from the idea of limits. Now, one thing that I should mention is that We've identified the unlimited source as a divine worldview. Once we've correctly identified that to be the ultimate unlimited reality in this world, with a capital U now being God himself, whatever limits comes from him, we accept. So the freedom that we want is the freedom to be able to be guided by the right source, right? So freedom is not our purpose. Our purpose now is to follow that divine worldview and have a growth mindset and be the best version of ourselves under the guidance of that divine worldview. So yes, a lot of you will ask me tomorrow, the next day, wait a second, you told me that we don't like limits, but God places limits on us. This is haram, that's haram. Absolutely, you're right. But we accept those limits because it comes from the unlimited source. Any limits from the proper unlimited source, we accept because we know it's part of our perfection. We sought that unlimited, we found that unlimited. Whatever that unlimited dictates to us, we accept wholeheartedly. So no, it's not freedom. It is, this submission to a proper worldview. It's feeding the God gene. Remember the God gene in the second class. It's feeding that gene, and part of that fuel for that God gene is submission to a worldview, right? Enslaving ourselves to that worldview. That enslavement becomes our purpose, to maintain that enslavement, to strengthen it, and ultimately to perfect it, inshallah.
Great, thank you, Maulana.
No problem.
So next question is pretty good here. How do challenges increase faith? Why are some given more tests than others?
So, challenges increase faith, absolutely, because I think it helps us discover a layer of ourself that we didn't know existed. On top of that, human nature is that when something goes wrong, we turn to God. That's just how it is. A diagnosis, an illness, a desire for a child, a tragedy, a request, all that, of course, goes back to that divine source. And so the more we go back to that divine source, the more we strengthen our connection with that divine source. So challenges usually result in us going back to God. Okay. And that's one of the, Shaheem Mutahari says it's one of the reasons why God places a hardship in your life. It's because he knows if everything was good in the life of the believer, they become heedless, they become ghafil, they fall asleep. Just to jolt them and wake them and remind them, I place a crack on the sidewalk for them to trip on. That's question number one. Question number two is about capacity. Why do others get challenges? Because Allah knows everyone's capacity. Again, Mutarba, you have 4 kids, correct? Am I right?
Yes, mashallah.
Inshallah, you have 4 kids. So every one of these 4 are completely different in terms of their personality. They come from one parenting, they come from one tarbiyat, they come from one mother and one father, but 4 unique personalities. On top of that, 4 capacities as well, right? You'll ask one child to do one thing that you will not ask another. You're able to identify within your home of 6 of you, which child has what capacity, what to ask for from which child. I'm no different. In my 3 kids, all 3 have a different capacity. I expect from them based on their capacity. I challenge them based on their capacity. I know they can do it. That's why I'm asking them to do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't ask them to do it. Like if I'm moving my dresser across the room, I'm not going to ask my 5-year-old Hassan, can you please, bro, grab that side? I'll grab this side. He can't do it. He's 5 years old, right? If that's the case for me and my 3 kids, you and your 4 kids, God also understands that for 7 billion of his creations. Each creation has its capacity. And every capacity now, his job is to grow. He's a murabbi, he's a murshid, he's a mun'im, he's a nurturer, he's a flourisher, he's a bestower, he's all these things. But his job essentially is to help us grow. He helps us grow by challenging our capacity. And as our creator, he knows exactly what everyone's capacity is. So literally, he devises and creates a plan of life, a path of life that is specifically for you and for you alone. Everything I've gone through, with my blessings, to my hardship, to my tragedy, to my illnesses, to my, to burning my hand, to everything, all was based on me and me alone. What you've gone through is based on you and you alone. And that's the wisdom of God, inshallah.
On the same line, Maulana, so similar idea is that
Sure.
if one person is challenged more, gone through more challenges or tests, as opposed to another person, then how is it fair to the other person who's not challenged as much to get the rewards, for example, if
Yeah.
you
So
know.
my question is, how are you measuring more here?
Yeah.
How do you say that I am being challenged more than person A is? On the outside, this person might look like they have the perfect life, right? Solid job, great profession, a lot of money, huge house, blah blah blah, and maybe their challenge or their test is not financial, whereas yours is financial. But maybe you have this serenity for God that they don't have, right? We're not able to look, it's amazing. And I always say this, we look to 10 different people and we think, oh my God, I wish I had that life. I wish I had that life. I wish I had that life. If only I had that life. If I had their life, oh, I'd be a completely different person. And we look to 10 different people, and we don't realize that there's 10 other people looking at me, wishing that they had my life, right? So it's all relative. Okay, it's all relative. I complained I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet, right? So, this idea that I'm being challenged more than they are, I don't know how you measure that. Because if we stop and for a moment we even entertain the idea that God is rougher with me than he is with person A for no apparent reason, then that becomes a discussion on the justice of God, right? And inshallah, if we get there, one of the discussions in this divine worldview is the attributes of the divine. And there we'll understand it's impossible within this worldview for that divine source to be anything but just. And we'll prove that again logically. And so, this idea of more, I think, is debatable. I don't know how one can measure more, because the reality is that God judges everybody or tests everybody based on their capacity. La yukallif Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. The very last verse of Surah Baqarah, the very first statement of that verse, Allah says, I do not give men a taklif, a test, a challenge, an obligation, except that it is within their capacity. We don't know each other's capacity. A person, it might, to you, it might say, wow, that house is beautiful. It's huge. It's big. But what happens inside that house, we have no idea, right? Their test may not be the mortgage payment, but their test might be, for example, their 17-year-old child, or their test might be their marriage, or their test might be their faith. You don't know. How do you know? I mean, we're not able to go inside of that unseen world, right? I don't know what's happening inside somebody's heart. I don't know what their story is or what their journey is. On the apparent, they look comfortable and they look easy, but it really deep down inside, everyone is going through their respective challenges, inshallah.